Greetings everyone, welcome back to Blade Bias. Today we are taking a look, my follow-up video on the HJF knives JF-B001, generously and temporarily loaned to me by the wonderful Ted Flips. Huge thank you to Ted for sending me this very confusing Balisong. So, when I first unboxed this thing, I wasn't really sure what to think, and I'm here to report almost 2 weeks later, I still don't know what to think. This is one of the most conflicting, confusing Balisongs that I have done a video on in quite some time. And I want to take you through that journey because this is a Balisong that has a lot of hype around it. And I'm here to say not that those people are wrong, but that I personally do not see the vision. I don't know where these people are getting it from. Again, they're free to have that opinion, but I am not, I'm not seeing it. Having said that, this is not an awful failure of a design. This is a new company. This is their first Balisong design. And considering how difficult it is for sometimes even established, well-known Balisong makers to make a decently flipping product, this is absolutely a success as a first product. As a first product for JF knives, HJF knives, what is it again? HJF knives. It's a really good first try. It's not unflippable. It's not terrible. It's not the worst thing I've ever flipped by any means. And there's even a good decent bit to like here. This is a 7075 aluminum bushing Balisong with a false live blade coming in at a respectable price of $228 MSRP. And I don't think it's awful, but we'll get into that later in terms of value proposition. This thing was just conflicting. Every time I picked it up, I had a different opinion of it, and I wasn't even sure. I kind of put off making this video for a little while until a few hours ago, I made a realization that flipped this thing almost completely on its head, and we'll get into that in just a second. But let's talk about the knife itself, the more, I don't want to say objective because this channel isn't objective, it's just me sharing my opinions, but let's just talk about the knife in general. What is on display here is competent. It flips, it does the tricks that I want it to do, it's built decently well, and there aren't a ton of issues, but there are some. My biggest issues were mentioned in the original video from my first impressions. Things like this cut that goes around the bottom of the handle. It's very sharp, it's very uncomfortable, especially if you're someone that fans lower down on the handles. You are going to feel it, and you're going to feel it quite a bit. Even the design overall is just not the most comfortable thing I've ever dealt with. Specifically things like the spine of the blade. It's not awful. It's not something that you're going to recoil from flipping for just 5 minutes. But if you flip this thing for, hours a day, multiple days a week, I think you're going to start to feel it over time. It's one of those not immediately uncomfortable, but it will wear on you over time kind of deals. And then there's downright dangerous parts of the knife, like the tip is absolutely lethal on this thing. Despite it being a false live blade, despite it not being sharp at all on this side, this is a full-on live blade tip up here that has scratched me and gotten me more times than I really would like to admit. And the Zen nipple here, man, it doesn't pinch you a lot. I will give it that. It's not like it's consistently and constantly pinching me. But when it gets you, man, does it get you, and it hurts. I have a mark right here from flipping in my offhand where that got me. And it was surprising. Like it got me pretty good. So just kind of general smaller discomfort things like that make this overall just not the most amazing thing to flip. And that's before we even talk about the balance. But before we get into the balance, let's talk about the good things, because there are genuinely good details on this knife. First of all, the construction of it, the feel in the hand, the quality of the materials is genuinely decent. Again, for a first knife maker design, this is pretty good. Feels good in the hands, the materials feel nice, the anodization is honestly excellent. The design of the blade I really like. The handles, I'm not super hot on the design still, and I do think that the design clashes just to my eye, but I can't really explain why. The jimping is pretty good. I have really nothing bad to say about the jimping. And the fact that this thing is flippable in general, like the fact that I can do all these tricks on it with a little bit of difficulty, but again, we'll get to that, is something to be proud of, again, for a first knife maker. My favorite parts of the knife are the sound and the tune. It is genuinely a well-tuned, good-sounding, premium-feeling Balisong, which I would hope it would be for an aluminum Balisong for $228. But the balance is where that confusion really comes in. I have been flipping this thing for a few hours today, right here on this very couch, just trying to figure out my final opinion on this thing. And it changed, like I said, every flipping session. Sometimes I would come away from it thinking, well, that was actually pretty decent. I enjoyed that. Other times I would be dropping it every 5 seconds, not knowing what was wrong. This thing, I just don't know what to think. When you start flipping it and you go for a chaplain, you'll notice that chaplains are certainly possible. But then, as you continue, you'll start to lose confidence in your chaplain. The Balisong will start feeling, oh, that almost went right on my toe, like it's going to fly off your hands. And then it gets more and more and more like that until eventually it flies away. Rollovers are kind of the same. You do a rollover and you think, okay, that felt decent enough, until you realize, no, that actually feels weird. When I string multiple rollovers together, it feels really weird. And I think my theory is because of the weight distribution on this thing. If you notice, there's not a ton of material down here in the handles. There's also not any screws that go through it to help with momentum and have a denser area down here that helps carry the handle through the swing to make it more momentum full. I don't know what that means. But the blade also kind of expands as it goes towards the tip, which means that there's a lot of tip weight here, but there's not a lot of weight down here in the handles. And you would think that that would make it kind of like the original Frank, a very tip-weighted Balisong, carries a lot of momentum in the blade. But what it ultimately feels like is a Balisong where I never truly know what's coming next. In music, there's a term called BPM, beats per minute. It's the amount of beats per minute in a song. It's fairly self-explanatory. And generally, that doesn't change. If it does change, there's things that are involved in making it sound decent, but if you're not doing it right, it can sound weird to the listener. A typical BPM song, something like 90 BPM, will stay that way throughout most of the song. And when you're flipping, you kind of have a BPM that you start flipping to. If you're flipping fast, there's kind of like a tempo that you develop as you do certain things on the Balisong. Starts and ends of tricks, ricochets, things like that. This Balisong, it feels like to start a combo, I have to go to 130 BPM. And then to end a combo, I have to slow down to 60 BPM because of the way that this thing carries momentum. When I go to throw my first rollover, I have to throw it harder because I feel like it's not going to carry the weight all the way through, because the handles at the end here don't feel very... they don't carry a ton of momentum. I'm not going to say momentum full again, even though I just did. But it carries more momentum than you expect. So halfway through that trick, you realize, I have way too much momentum to go into my next trick, or else this is going to fly away. So I have to slow down dramatically. And you end up playing this song and dance where you're just kind of always speeding up and slowing down, never truly finding your right rhythm in your flipping, which always just kind of makes you feel on edge. It makes you feel like you're fighting the Balisong the whole time that you're flipping it. And normally I'd be okay with this. Sometimes there's Balisongs that are super fun. You have to fight with them a little bit, but they have this interesting characteristic that makes them fun to flip. Or a Balisong that you don't have to fight that's super consistent but kind of boring, like a Kraken trainer. This isn't really either. It's too inconsistent to be consistent, but it's never really gets to that fun area, even though it always keeps you on your toes and it always has something new to swing at you. When you flip this thing, I feel like I'm flipping a loaded gun. I have to tiptoe around it constantly to get it to do what I want to do. And that's not a very fun experience. And nowhere did this ever become more apparent than when I stopped flipping it and I went and I picked up my cheese. A Balisong that is quite literally 1/3 of the price of this thing is just effortless in comparison. If you've watched a lot of my videos, you'll have seen a video, multiple examples of this, where I have a Balisong that's super uncomfortable to the touch. It's pokey, it's prickly, it's got a weird texture. And then I go to another Balisong that's machined better, and I go, wow, this feels like silk. It's like I'm holding a cloud. This is the flipping example, or the flipping equivalent of that. Flipping this is weird. You're fighting it constantly, and nowhere do you realize that better than going back to a Balisong that just allows you to flip at your speed, at your tempo. Now, again, there are Balisongs that make you flip fast or flip slow in order to work with their balance profile, and that's okay, but this thing never really finds its footing. It never feels at home fast or slow. It kind of has to be a combination of both of them. And that's what's just so annoying to me about flipping this thing. Again, it's not unflippable. I obviously can flip it, and after you get used to it, you can flip it quite well. Anyone can flip really anything as long as it can do all the tricks, and this objectively can do all the tricks, even if it is a little difficult to get into fans and then carries too much momentum after the fan is started, so you have to slow down the fan. It's really weird. But then the second you go back to something else, you realize, wow, flipping was this easy the whole time. It just kind of feels like you're handicapping yourself for no reason, for no gain. But I hear what you're saying. The cheese is 1/3 of the price. It's made by Nibales. It's impossibly cheap, whatever. So let's compare it to something that's almost exactly the same price, the Kraken trainer. And it's the same deal. The Kraken trainer, flipping-wise, beats the pants off of the JF here. It's consistent, it's smooth, you don't have to fight it all the way through. And ultimately, it's agreeable. And I think that's the best way that I can describe the HJF knives. It's disagreeable. It's like that friend that's not an awful person. He's fun to hang out with, but he just argues with you just enough to piss you off. And then anytime you hang out with other people, you're like, this is what hanging out with a friend is supposed to feel like. But you still like that friend. They're not an awful person. You still hang out with them. You still enjoy your time with them. But man, are they disagreeable sometimes. And this is just a disagreeable knife. It never really does what I want it to do. I have to tiptoe around it constantly to get it to do what I want it to do. And it ultimately makes a flipping experience that isn't totally satisfying. Is it unflippable? Absolutely not. I think it's actually quite flippable, again, for a first try. But going back to anything else will make you realize that, damn, flipping doesn't have to feel this hard. And that ultimately leaves me feeling kind of just deflated on this thing. For $228, I think there's just so many other things that you can recommend and flip that you will enjoy much more than you will enjoy this. And there are some people out there that are really going to like it. There's plenty of people out there who have already reviewed this thing who love it. I'm not saying they're wrong, once again. I really want to hammer that point home. But for me personally, it just doesn't really work at enough for me to be totally set on recommending it. And it doesn't do enough wrong for me to say never buy this. So it leaves us in this weird gray area where it would just be a knife that if I did own it, I wouldn't really flip it a lot. So that has been my confusing time with the HJF JF-B001. A very disagreeable knife indeed. Thank you to Ted for sending this thing out, and thank you guys for watching. I've been ranting for long enough. Have a good one. Peace.